And it's a very sexy title to use, you know, because it really shows the importance of Turkey as a strategic country, you know, connecting different geographies, different civilizations, and different cultures with each other. Because, you know, as you all know, Turkey is strategically located in a very precious location, and that's why it brings a lot of economic, political, and geopolitical importance on the table when we talk about any regional issue or global issue. But today, you know, when Ibrahim asked me, you know, what should be the title of the subject, I said Turkey at the Crossroads, and you know, probably he was a bit surprised about it. But what I mean, Turkey at the Crossroads, is unfortunately very different than I was thinking, you know, 5, 10, maybe 14 years ago. Because Turkey was at the crossroads, you know, like connecting the civilizations as an important strategic location. Today, Turkey at the crossroads with great uncertainty about its future. So it's standing at the edge of the cliff, you know, with a matter of survival concerns. Unfortunately, the current risks that Turkey has in today's, you know, climate, you know, I will categorize them within 3 main categories, within 3 main subjects: democratic concerns, economic concerns, and security concerns. And all these 3 add up the risk level for the country to a certain level that, unfortunately, Turkey, we know today cannot be sustainable in the current status quo. So something needs to change. Either, you know, Turkey we know today will change. What is Turkey we know today, or historically since 1923, is a secular, democratic, and open society. It cannot. But last, you know, few years, especially since 2012, it's very difficult to categorize Turkey as a democracy, unfortunately. Or, you know, like Turkey, you know, or Turkey's current situation will change because there will be a political change because of these risks affiliated with it. And I think the main weakness of the system became on the surface when July 15 coup attempt challenged the regime, because it showed us how vulnerable is Turkey's security institutions, how vulnerable Turkey's democracy, and how vulnerable Turkey's economic system is. And I think it's important. It showed us to a great extent that the current government was not able to manage the country to the level because, you know, basically the Turkish security institutions were open to infiltration by religious and mysterious secretive organization, you know, based in Pennsylvania. So I think there's, you know, enough reason to blame the government because they created the platform for something crazy like that. It sounds crazy, you know, to anyone. I think, you know, someone in Pennsylvania can even infiltrate their people to military and security institutions of the country. From the economic perspective, you know, I will, you know, come to all these subjects more in depth. But from the economic perspective, we saw the recent credit downgrades by 2 major credit rating agencies, namely S&P and Moody's. So we immediately saw the economic vulnerabilities more common, and people start talking more about the macroeconomic situation in Turkey because of the political situation change. And the security, I think, is probably everyone agrees that today Turkey is under direct threat by various terrorist organizations. Namely ISIS, you know, now they call them Gülen, and also, you know, PKK. So we now having immediate attacks on a daily basis to Turkey from all these different fronts, and Turkey is vulnerable to these attacks, and Turkey lost more than 600 people. Only this year is more than the total number of people Turkey lost last 3 years. So from all these angles, Turkey needs a change, and change should be political, or the status quo is going to change Turkey to something that, you know, will be extremely dangerous for the future of Turkey. And unfortunately, Turkey is becoming today more, you know, I think many people agree in the West and in different academic institutions that Turkey is drifting away from democracy, it's becoming more authoritarian. But unfortunately, authoritarian Turkey is very difficult to sustain the unity of its people. So that's the major national security threat to the country. So in normal democracies, if any one of these 3 pillars has significant weaknesses surface, there will be political demand, there will be accountability, you know, need from the people to change the way the government manages the system, or there will be a political change, right? So it's, if there is a significant security risk or vulnerability, or if there's a drifting away from democracy or economic crisis, it may lead to political change within the democratic system, democratic framework. Since 2000, I think I see different milestones for Turkey. Like I think from 2002, until between 2002 and 2009, I think AKP did a good job. Like managing the economy, growing the economy, giving some liberties to minorities and to people, and from the Kurdish perspective, from the economic growth perspective, from the civil liberties. I think many people supported AKP in that period. Even like centrists, people from the centrist spectrum of politics supported AKP. But we see a drastic change in the economic, political, and the foreign policy decisions of AKP starting slowly in 2009. I think it's important to see this 2009 and 2012 period as a kind of where the change starts closely, and there are some more bad economic decisions made. There are some bad decisions about the peace process. We see some journalists arrested. We see the fabricated cases against the secularist Turkish military and bureaucrats, the Ergenekon and sledgehammer cases. And now AKP agrees that those were fabricated, but they blame another Islamist group for being responsible for these fabricated cases. But many people suffered drastically, like they spent years in jail because the cooperation between Gulen movement and AKP basically blamed these people for attempting military coup in the country even in 2007, 2009 periods. But unfortunately, none of these two main pillars, the democracy and security, didn't create any demand for political change. People bought the idea that Turkey is under attack by the Western countries, so we need to have more authoritarian regime to control our borders, control our people. We need to arrest, journalists because these journalists are puppets of the West, and we need to make sure we control national security. Some people bought this idea, maybe rightly or not, but they agreed that some moves against Turkey, like including the military coup attempt, or they were orchestrated by the West. From the security perspective, I think probably one of the most important thing is the Maslow hierarchy, right? Security is the most important thing for a citizen to live, and that's the number one responsibility of the country, to protect its citizens. But we saw even contrary trend. AKP, the ruling AKP, did receive 42% of the votes in June 2015 elections, and in 3 months there were multiple terror attacks, multiple security weaknesses, and we only saw the increase in the votes of AKP to 49%. So, and they were able to form the government single-handedly. So the security situation didn't create a political change and even consolidate the power, because people felt like there was, the alternative was more like maybe riskier, or maybe they were not secure if they don't have they have a coalition government. But economy is a different story. I think in Turkish political history, there are 4 major political transitions. One in 1950, one in 1973, one in 1995, and the last one in 2002. And they all happened following a major economic recession. So Turkish voters historically vote for change when the economy gets impacted. And now we are in a process that economy is under significant risk of collapse. But let me talk about democracy a little bit, where we are in today's Turkish democracy. I think no need to explain this crowd that there are significant democracy problems in the country. There are 152 journalists arrested today, arrested in general, they're under, behind bars today. 40,000 people got arrested after the July 15 attack, July 15 military coup. 90,000 people got fired from their jobs, and I think there are like 40,000 people being under investigated currently. And it makes 160,000 state officials, state employees in total. And it's 0.4% of the whole workforce in the country. Basically, they don't have, they lost their jobs. Multiplied it by 4, is like more than 600,000 people directly impacted with the current purge at the government. I think this is important data to share. And maybe the more important thing is erosion of institutions. People don't trust institutions anymore. The judiciary, according to AKP, the judiciary was controlled by the Gülen's organization for years, and that's why they purged many judges and prosecutors from the system. But now, the trust to the system is historically low. Is 30% of the people trust in the Turkish judiciary system. And when you have only 30% of the people trust the judiciary organizations, I mean, you cannot talk about democracy, but you cannot also talk about economic growth, right? So it impacts the economic growth directly. And lack of separation of powers, we're talking about changing the system to presidential system. Of course, everything can be discussed within any democratic society, but currently we have a regime that president has a party affiliation which is fully unconstitutional. So that's why they trying to create a legal framework for the current status quo, but it depends on many different parameters. What other opposition parties will decide, and if they're going to be referendum or they're going to be general elections in the country. So it creates new uncertainties for the country for next year or 2018. So there's a discussion about potential general elections or referendum in 2017, and Turkey just got out of this crazy election cycle. So we had we had presidential elections, local elections, 2 general elections, and the business committee was waiting for the time. Okay, let's get this done, and we focus on economic growth. And now we're talking about another cycle of elections, because whatever, if there's a referendum or not, in 2019 there will be presidential elections, local elections, and parliamentary elections again. So it's going to be almost 10 years of crazy election period, which is not good for any democratic system or economic climate in any country. At this point also, I believe the Kurdish issue is the most important issue in Turkish democracy. The AKP took some important steps and successful steps towards the solution of the problem with more rights, more political and cultural rights given. But I don't think they were enough. I think we should have more decentralized system in many different parts of the country, and have them, have courage to have more voice in their own administration, on their people. And unfortunately, with the current purge, more than, I may be wrong with this data, but more than 25 elected Kurdish mayors were purged from the system, and Turkish government appointed people from Ankara for their jobs. I mean, they were elected officials, elected by the votes of the people on the ground. And, and again, the whole idea was, like we are purging the system, cleaning the system from Gülenists, but, they basically used this opportunity to also get rid of some, Kurdish elements from the system. So I think that was very problematic. So all this, I think all democracy problems are, everyone talks about it, everyone writes about it. Probably I repeated everything that you already know. But unfortunately, in democratic cultures that, unfortunately, Turkey's democracy since 1946, with the multi-party system introduced, basically the problems in democracy were not enough for people to think that there is a need for political change to democratic needs. So So, there's something I think a more political scientist should think about. But the second pillar is the security. I would think security, as I mentioned, the Maslow hierarchy is the most important thing. I mean, you need to survive in order to make money, or in order to eat, or in order to do anything. So, but unfortunately, Turkish security climate was, Turkey is first of all, I should say that maybe Turkey is a very difficult geography. Turkey is never going to have a very easy, very comfortable life that many Western European countries or Latin American countries enjoy. Turkey is a tough neighbor. There's Middle East. They're like important gas from Iran, buy oil from Russia. And you need to have good relationship with them. There are all this political conflict, geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. Right, but you need to minimize. You need to have strong institutions. You need to have a strong military. Historically, Turkey is very strong military organization. The second largest army within NATO. More than 1 million soldiers in uniform in any time. So it's a very strong military organization. And from the other perspectives, from the foreign policy, right? You need to have a foreign policy that is focusing on maintaining peace and stability in the region, and peace and stability should be your number one goal. As the founder of the country, say peace in the world, peace at the world, peace at home, peace in the world. So it means you need to have very cautious foreign policy that focus on your national interest at the first phase. Between 2002 and 2009, I think Turkish foreign policy did also a good job. Turkey was negotiating a peace deal between Israel and Syria in 2007-2008. From that point, we came to a climate, we came to an environment that Turkey has problems with each neighbor and each issue. Today, maybe it seems like Turkey-Russia problem has been resolved, but just a couple of days ago, Turkey exchanged, the President Erdogan exchanged very harsh words with Iraqi President Abadi. So I think it's a very important situation to monitor, especially in light of current military operations in Syria and Iraq. The state of security institution is very vulnerable. After the coup attempt, half of the generals are fired from the positions. Some of them replaced. Most of the high-level people were replaced with the following military council meeting. What I think is important information to share that currently there are not enough pilots to fly F-16s the Turkish Air Force has. So basically some of the people the government fired a couple months ago, they called them back to fly the F-16s for their operations in Syria and Iraq. So, my initial reaction was, if you fire these people, basically you don't trust these people, how can you let them fly your most important weaponry, or if you trust them to fly them, why did you fire them, right? So it's very irrational behavior because the whole system is very confused right now, I would put it in nice ways. But terror attack by PKK, ISIS, left-wing terror organizations like DHKPC, we don't know exactly what happened, I think, with the July 15th still, but if the allegations of the government are accurate, the Gulen organization can be also considered a terrorist organization. I don't have enough evidence about it, but I think it's convincing, not conclusion at this point. I'm convinced they are part of it, but I'm not, I can't put the verdict on the subject personally because I'm just looking at the data. It's a very complicated issue. There's an investigation happening at the parliament now. I think I will be watching very closely. So, but security situation, the worsened security situation last 2 years didn't really didn't really create a need or demand for political change. And also think about it. I think I'm not talking about foreign policy separately. Of course, I can answer your questions, but Davutoğlu, I say 2002-2009 period of Turkish foreign policy was successful because it was very proactive in terms of making peace deals. Israel-Syria deal, Turkish foreign policy was brokering a deal in Somaliland. I think it's important. I never say, no, Turkey should not really involve with that. I think it's important. Turkey has an important heritage, and I think it's important if you can get involved to resolve issues and create peace and stability, you should get involved. But after 2009 and 2010, especially with the Arab Spring, Turkish foreign policy started getting involved to make negative impact on the current crisis. And that was my problem. I never said that Turkey should have a very introvert foreign policy, just shouldn't have embassies all around Africa. I think it's great, but you need to have a foreign policy focus on resolving issues. Unfortunately, starting in 2010 with the Arab Spring, 2011, Turkey acted not as a secular democracy in the region, but Turkey acted as a Sunni Islamist actor. So that created problems because Turkey took a side in many various conflicts in the Middle East. It started with Syria. I think it was important to have a dialogue going on with all the parties involved in the crisis as a country like Turkey, because Turkey is a secular state with democratic norms, so you can talk to Assad regime, you can talk to Sunnis, you can help the opposition to gain some credibility within the system. But if you alienate Assad regime by exchanging verbal aggressiveness between Assad and Erdogan, you cannot make any positive impact. You are silent. You are no different than any Sunni actor, playing a role in the conflict. So that was my problem. So I think that's why it created a lot of security vulnerabilities for the country. So after Turkey's involvement in Syria, we witnessed increased amount of ISIS presence in Turkey. And when it was asked to Prime Minister Davutoglu at that point, are you worried about ISIS? Is ISIS a terrorist organization? He answered, I can't call ISIS a terrorist organization, they're just angry boys. He said that. But because, to be just here, no one, it was early 2014, no one knew what al-Nusra was, what was ISIS was. There were spin-offs from al-Nusra, at that point. But I think, like Prime Minister of an important country in the region should be a little bit more cautious, because you don't know who these guys are. They may be your fellow Sunni brothers, but you don't know who these guys are, in heart. So, that's why I think that was a big mistake. And ISIS created hundreds of cells in the country because, they were basically led, to organize the opposition against Assad regime from the borders of Turkey. And now, when Turkey had to change its policy because it realized that it's not sustainable, Turkey ended up with ISIS terrorism in its homeland, and we saw multiple terror attacks by ISIS starting in 2015. Many people got killed, hundreds of them. I think the last one was 2 days ago in Gaziantep. 3 police officers were killed. There was another one 2 months ago. The 50 people in a wedding ceremony got killed, and there is no end of it because now basically Turkey is a region that ISIS and opposition, Syrian opposition kind of melted each other. So you don't know who ISIS was, the moderate Islamists. It's impossible to know because you can't have Turkey is not known for its great intelligence agency like big powers. Even unfortunately, President Erdogan know about the cooking military coup from his brother-in-law, not from the head of the Turkish intelligence office. So that was kind of a shame for a large, big state like Turkey in the region. So let's talk about economy. These two main subjects, democracy and security, are I think very important, but we need to talk about economy and what really, where we are at in the Turkish, economic growth, and what are the main risks and how economic threats may impose a democratic change in the country. First of all, even probably until 2009, the economy was doing all right because Turkey was following the IMF program. Turkish government didn't change any basics of the reform plan that former Minister of Economy Kemal Dervish built, and with the IMF support, of course. And that was a period that Turkey was enjoying relatively good growth. When other economies start facing economic problems starting 2007, economic crisis, Turkey was growing more than any other emerging market. From 2009 to 2012, I think from the perspective of economy, I can also categorize this 3 years where things start changing a little bit, because I think there was a little bit self-confidence, that we are doing great, because look at US, like they can't, they're, like in a negative growth, we're doing 8% growth, we are doing great, we know how to manage economy, we are the experts. I mean, I remember it was sad, like, Babacan, which is one of the brightest members of the AKP cabinet, comes into town in Washington and basically, shakes his finger and tells, he can teach how to manage an economy to, like a Minister of Finance. I listened to that story from the Minister of Finance of a different country directly, so they were all shocked, because it was kind of self-confidence, but rightful or not. But starting in 2011, things start looking bad. But even in 2011, the growth looked good. If you look at the numbers, there were like 10% growth, I think, in 2010 and 2011. Things look good if you look at the papers. Financial Times had headlines, Turkey rising star within emerging markets, a great success. So there were a lot of positive media on Turkish economy, on Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, New York Times. Of course, they look at the numbers and they say, things look great. US is in a recession, the European Union is in a recession, Greece has a huge financial debt that is not sustainable, so Turkey looks great. Look, they're growing 10%. But if you look deeper, I took a personal risk at that point. In 2011, I published a piece on the Foreign Policy magazine saying it's called Fragile Success. Because the 10% growth is good if the growth is based on manufacturing, if the growth is based on production. If you have like a small current account deficit, if you have 10% growth and 5% current account deficit and 4 or 5% inflation, it's good. But if you have 10% growth, almost 10% current account deficit, and 10% inflation, it's not sustainable. At some point, it can explode if your economy is not based on production and exports and like a high value add manufacturing. So Turkish economy was based on consumption. Turkish economy was attracting a lot of hot capital from overseas because Turkey looked good and the Fed interest levels were almost at historic level, and Turkey was able to attract a lot of cheap money, and this money was used not to build sustainable industries, but to make people, to have people credit cards and spend money on various issues, and they felt good, right? It feels good when you update your iPhone from iPhone 6 to iPhone 7. You don't care about next month that much if you do it, but you feel good for a couple of years. But in this lag for political system is a couple of years, it may be 5 years. You feel good for 5 years, things are looking good, but at the end, now, like when we look at today, growth is 3%.